Hello, Internet. My name's Father Casey Cole. I'm a Franciscan Friar and Catholic priest, and this Valentine's Day, I thought it'd be a good idea to answer your questions about dating, love, and marriage. Let's see if sparks fly. Let's start off with the question I'm sure all of you are asking, which is, why are you, a celibate priest, giving advice on dating? For some, this may seem like a completely fair and logical question to ask, but personally, I think it sounds kind of silly when you apply it to other professions. How can you, a male doctor, be a gynecologist when you're not a woman? How can you, someone who has never done drugs, counsel people addicted to drugs? Personal experience can be helpful, but it's not always the most important form of knowledge. As a priest, I have studied family dynamics and human sexuality in seminary, am trained in pastoral care, hear confessions all the time, and have the benefit of counseling many couples. Not to mention the fact that I wasn't always a priest. I did my fair share of dating. So yeah, in short, sometimes priests can actually have some useful advice for dating. What are the pitfalls and problems in relationships that you see as patterns? Obviously, there are many directions I could take this, and I'm sure I'll touch on them in later questions, but let's focus on probably the biggest source of relational issues: having specific expectations and failing to communicate them. There's nothing wrong with having needs or specific expectations when it comes to a relationship. You may want a partner who does the dishes, who shares their feelings, who spends time doing the things you like to do. Sometimes we can get a little too strict or a little too picky, but if that's what you're looking for, fine. The problem is when people have expectations and they never voice these expectations. They have very specific needs and they want their partner to read their minds and do everything without being told. That's not going to work. If something matters to you, make your needs known. Now, that doesn't mean that just because you communicate it that your partner has to do everything you want, but good relationships are built on honest, direct communication. How do I carry on a conversation with someone new to get to know them better? For some, this may seem like a silly question, but I absolutely love it and think that we need to do more as a whole society to improve our conversational skills. Let me recommend a few things. First, it's all about listening and not just with your ears. What is the person saying and what are they saying, if you catch my drift? Be attentive to not only their words, but their tone, their body language, their entire affect. Second, follow the rules of improv. Yes, and. Don't be the one to change the subject or take control of the conversation. When they say something, make sure that you say something that adds to what they've just said. Too often what people do is they jump right to their own story that relates sort of to the topic, but can shut the other down, turning attention away from them to you. Instead, try asking a follow-up question. They shared with you for a reason, let them say more. Stick to their thing before moving on to yours. I say, instead of trying to cover every topic in one conversation, see how long you can talk about the same topic. This is how you build depth in your relationship. Of course, there are times that you may want to initiate a conversation yourself, like the next question. When should questions of faith, religion, marriage, and raising children be broached before the relationship is too far along? This may not be everyone's opinion, but I would say definitely not immediately, but earlier rather than later. It is perfectly okay to start with small talk. You have to build a rapport. Getting some basic things out of the way before you dive into the depths of yourself is important. On a first date, I probably wouldn't jump right into how many kids you want to have or expectations of marriage. Few people are going to make it to a second date with that approach. But if the person you're dating is someone you could see yourself getting married to, and I would hope they would be, otherwise what are you doing with them, it's important that you not hide what is presumably most important to you, your faith. I'd say, as soon as you're exclusive, using the words boyfriend, girlfriend, and are more casual around each other, it's time. Is it sinful to date in high school because it's unlikely to make it to marriage? No, of course not. Just because it's unlikely to make it to marriage doesn't mean that it won't, and even if it doesn't, dating, if done appropriately, is an important part of human development. Learning to care about someone other than ourselves, sharing intimate details about us, and exploring romantic feelings are all critical experiences in life. You could meet someone at 31 having never dated before, and it could turn out great, but I think that going through love, heartbreak, and romance on a small scale helps in the long run. That is, as long as you're keeping it holy while in high school. There can be a great danger in overextending yourself or compromising your morals when your hormones are very high. If a relationship causes you to sin, I'd avoid it. Can a Christian date a non-Christian? Absolutely. But it's going to be difficult. The Catholic Church allows for the dating and even marrying of non-Christians. There's even a special rite within the Church for such relationships, and it is totally allowed. But that doesn't mean that it's recommended. Marrying someone of another Christian denomination, let alone another religion, is tough. Not only does it present issues for raising kids, it leaves a separation on what should be the most important foundational aspect of a marriage: faith. Personally, I'm not against interfaith marriages, but I would be very careful entering in them. That's just me. On a similar note, how do you bring a spouse to Catholicism without pushing? As they say, the cornerstone of every good relationship is the desire to change the other person, right? I can fix him! While I think that it is incredibly important that you be a witness to your spouse and everyone you meet, I would be very, very cautious with your intentions, especially if you enter into the relationship with the hope of changing them. You have to love the person as they are and not as you hope they will be one day. Especially if you're already married, you cannot make it your goal to convert them. You knew who you were marrying when you did. Instead, all you can do, I think, is to love them from your faith and to show them, without ceasing, where your strength comes from. Invitations can be helpful, but can come across pushy at times. I say, follow Jesus with your whole heart and give your spouse the opportunity to do the same. During the Sign of Peace, my parents, along with other married couples, do a quick kiss since they're married, but what about those dating and in the engagement stage? Should they shake hands, do a hug, or what? I don't have a hard and fast rule on this, but I would really caution against bringing romantic love into the Sign of Peace, even for married couples. This part of the Mass is not about special relationships, it's about the universal, selfless love we have with the whole body of Christ. Couples who have been together for years can kiss without it being overly romantic or inwardly focused. For young couples, this is more difficult. In general, I would avoid this altogether. What are some things that are allowed and not allowed during dating? Now here's the question everyone wants the priest to answer, right? Looking for validation. A priest told me I could... Yeah, not gonna go down that road. While there are certainly things that are always inappropriate, like sex, most things are a bit more relative. For some people, holding hands and short kisses could be an opportunity for lust. For others, sitting on a couch together and falling asleep in each other's arms while watching a movie could be entirely wholesome. You've got to ask yourself, does this lead me to things I know I shouldn't be doing, and what's in my heart while we do this? If the action doesn't build your relationship in Christ, I would err on the side of caution. Another way to look at it would be, if you wouldn't do it in front of your friends, then I probably wouldn't do it either. Then again, you may have some really weird friends, so maybe that's not the best gauge either. How should a Catholic find someone to date? This is one of those questions where I don't feel particularly equipped to answer this well. It's been 16 years since I met my last girlfriend, and that was at college. We met at a party and started talking and dated a few weeks later. Today, man, it's tough. All I can say is you have to put yourself out there. Take a risk. Talk to strangers. Go to new places. Maybe don't go out looking for your soulmates. Go out looking for new friends. Meet enough people, and something might just click. As a single Catholic person discerning marriage, what should one have established spiritually, besides obviously being baptized and confirmed, before committing to marriage? In order to be married in the Catholic Church, there are 3 things that need to be present: freedom to marry, openness to children, and a lifelong commitment. If you have all these 3 things, you are free to marry. Outside of that, it really depends on the person. Before you enter into this, you have to ask yourself, am I open to these things? Am I ready to commit myself to someone forever, no matter what? And am I willing to raise children in the faith? What is the best date for Catholic couples? I'd have to say April 25th, because it's not too hot, not too cold. All you need is a light jacket. Okay, just kidding. Obviously, the specifics are going to depend on the couple. There's no one thing that will be special to everyone, but I'd say that a perfect date is something that brings the couple closer together. I know that sounds pretty generic, but if we're honest with ourselves, most dates don't do this. They're routine, they're shallow, they're performative. I'm not saying that every date has to be over the top or always creative. Staying home and watching a movie can be a great way to learn about the other person and to grow in comfort. What I'm saying is that a good date either moves you closer to or farther away from someone in faith, in commitment, and love. If you spend time with someone and gain no new information for your marriage discernment, it may not have been time well spent. How do you know who is the one God sends you? Unpopular opinion alert, but I don't think soulmates exist. That's a product of Hallmark and the diamond industry. Theologically and biblically, God doesn't send you the one you're supposed to love. He helps you love the one you're committed to. Marriage is not about living a preordained fairy tale. It's about representing the fidelity of God in a human relationship. Now, are there people who are better suited for you? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, there are probably millions of people in the world who you could love and with whom you could raise children. Rather than looking for the perfect one, look for someone who makes you holier. That's what marriage is about. What would you say to someone who has been hurt in relationships several times and is afraid to date again? First off, I'm sorry. Trust me when I say that I know what that feels like. Mostly what I would say is that our worth and our love is found in God, not another person. I cannot guarantee that someone won't hurt you again, but I can say that if your ultimate sense of self lies in God, there is no human pain that will ever be too much to bear. When you ground yourself totally in God, you'll be strong enough to be vulnerable with someone else. And finally, what if I'm engaged and now thinking that God is calling me to the priesthood? Whew, that's a big one. Now, I assume you're asking for a friend so that your friend's fiancé doesn't find out, but I would say that you have to tell them. Being engaged is very serious, yes, but you're not married yet. And rather than just going through everything because you don't want to hurt your fiancé's feelings or make her worry, you have to be honest. Say these words: I'm having doubts. This does not mean that you have to call off the wedding necessarily, but it does mean that you need to be open with her and you need to answer this question definitively before you get married. You do not want to be 3 years into marriage and realize that you've made a mistake. Whether it be marriage or the priesthood, we're talking about a lifetime commitment that requires your whole heart and your full attention. You cannot enter into either covenant unless you are prepared to see it through to the end. If that means you got to postpone the wedding to get your head straight, well, so be it. You might just have to lose the deposit. She is going to be upset with you, but nowhere near as upset as she'll be as she finds out in 3 years that you rushed into a marriage you weren't fully into. I cannot imagine how difficult this is, but know that I will pray for you and all those facing similar situations. May God give you clarity. And may God bless all of you who asked questions beforehand. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them, but if you leave your questions in the comments, I'll try to get as many as I can. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day and that your love for God and one another may grow this year.